down with people from the Plone community to talk about the projects, tools, and ideas shaping our ecosystem. Every episode is live, every episode is open, and every episode is a chance for you to join the conversation. Speaking of which, if you're enjoying the stream, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people in the community. And if you don't want to miss future episodes, subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you get notified when we go live again next week. The best part of doing this live, you can ask questions, drop them in the chat at any point during the session, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. And now, let's welcome my colleague, friend, and fellow Trekkie, Jakob Kahl, sharing his experience on sprint organization. Good day, Jakob. First, tell us a bit about yourself and how Plone came into your life.
Hey Erico, and hi to the big old internet out there. How Plone came into my life. It's a long story, but it can also be told quite short. Um, I was looking for a job and stumbled upon that lovely company called Kid Concept, and they were looking for someone who could work with computers and stuff and so on. And I was like, yeah, I think I can do that. And then they told me about a thing called Plone. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what that is. And they showed me. And somehow that kept me around for 7.5 years by now, I think. I started in 2018. So it's been a while. It's been a while since. Um, yeah,
Good. And we're talking about sprints today, right?
exactly.
So, why are sprints important for the Plone community?
So, yeah, I mean, as you all know, Plone is an open source product that is not developed by one single entity or company and so on with one big strategic plan behind it. Sure, there's a strategic plan, but there's not like a head of Plone making decisions. Oh, the community is gonna do this or the community is gonna do that. But it's rather a process that goes on of the course of the year. Every day there's commits on some Plone related repositories, and there's a steady flow of development happening all of the time. Um, but I think when it comes to like larger steps or even larger leaps forward, it's sometimes necessary to focus on specific things for a certain period of time. Um, and for that, the easiest and the best way to do that is just to get together in person. Uh, yeah, sure, we do have this lovely tool called internet with our nice webcams and so on, and we can talk to each other and even see each other and so on. But especially when it comes to like discussions involving more than two persons, um, it's really worth it to come together in person from time to time and figure things out together. Yeah. And
We
and
we have a
yeah,
question already from the
sure.
audience. So, what do you do during a sprint?
You start running around in circles. No, you don't. I mean, originally the term was first coined in agile software development, to separate projects into uh, sized chunks, um, in, or in time frames actually. And now I think how we use it in the community doesn't really fit that anymore. It's rather a week of getting together, code on something, get into discussions. yeah, the main point is being together and to code. I think that's what sets it apart, for example, from a conference where we also get together and do stuff together and also do a lot of talking, but not so much coding. I think the main point of a sprint is a coding get together that's collaborative. Yeah, sure.
Oh, we have another nice question from Astrid. So, had you attended a sprint organized by someone else before you organized your first one?
Oh, good question. I'm not entirely sure about that. I mean, I joined Kid Concept in November of 2018, and I think the first Beethoven Sprint I was involved in, I wouldn't say that, oh, I definitely didn't organize that on my own, but I was already heavily involved because at the time it was only Timo and me working in Bonn at Kid Concept. So, oh, my spaceship fell down. What a
Yes,
pity.
Enterprise is gone again.
Yeah. Mm, whatever. Where was I? So yeah, no, my first sprint was Beethoven Sprint 2019, which I helped to organize. And then after that, I think that the first actual sprint in the community, probably the Plone Sprint in 2020. I'm not entirely sure to be. Oh, the Plone Conference Sprint. I know I wasn't at the conference in 2019, so probably Plone Sprint in 2020.
Okay, and let me ask you something. We discussed that before. The whole organizing a sprint is it's important, but also who should attend the sprint? Should be only the people that are already involved in the community, or do you think it's also a good place for newbies or people willing to join the community to go and attend and be introduced to Plone?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say everyone should attend as many sprints as possible, obviously. Uh, no, it's obviously not only for seniors or who know they way already know their way around a lot in the community. It's really important to have these people around as well, because if you have a bunch of newbies only who don't really know what to do, they're probably not going to do a lot. I mean, could still have a good time, but especially for newbies, uh, hi to Brazil. Especially for newbies, I think uh, that it's very worth it because you have the seniors at hand there to help you with all sorts of questions and trouble you might run into while coding stuff. And sure, have a really helpful community. We have the community forums. You can also potentially directly ask people all over the internet for help on your problems. But I think that's a different thing because it's all async and you might have to wait a day or two for an answer. And during a sprint, if you're stuck at something, you're coding, you can just walk over to that guy Erico over there and tap on his shoulder and say, ah, I don't know, my cookie Plone is broken. Can you help me? Why is that not working? And yeah, so especially for people new to Plone or new to software development in general, it's really worth it to join such a sprint.
Okay, that's important, and I would like to name drop in here, and I think Mark Palomaki is the from Sweden is a great example. Last year he simply appeared out of nowhere. He never been to the Plone community, and then all of a sudden he joined us in Bucharest. And now he sat with us, asked questions, and so on and so forth. And nowadays he's really productive and contributing and helping other people to get productive as well. So go to Sprint if you want to basically be introduced to the community and so on. That's really important. But we're talking about you, right? And we're talking about organizing sprint. So Beethoven Sprint. Tell us about Beethoven Sprint. How long has it been going, and why Beethoven Sprint is important for the organization kit concept, for the community, for the city Bonn, because I'm pretty sure we increased the tourism revenue by a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But important
Especially in the
thing here,
bars.
exactly, it's important for us to share about Beethoven Sprint, but most important, why Kit Concept organized Beethoven Sprint and why the Plone community benefits from having yet another sprint.
So, that's actually a lot of questions you came up there. So let's break that down. First thing was you asked about history. So that I think first Beethoven Sprint, if I'm not mistaken, because I haven't been around the Plone community at the time, but I think the first one happened in 2017, I think. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, I think so. In the teeny tiny old Kid Concept office in Bonn. Um, and it is not the actual birthplace for Volto, from what I learned. I talked to Rob about that the other day, and the first commits on Volto were actually written a year earlier in Barcelona. So shout out to Victor, I think, who organized the sprint there. And yeah, from that year on, we had a sprint basically every year, apart for a certain time in 2020 and 2021 that we don't talk about. But I think we managed to do it still justice by organizing some online events. Then, yeah, and from up until then, we had it each year. I think 3 years back or so, some weird folks from Kid Concept figured out that this can be timed with some weird Star Trek event as well. That's in Bonn for some reason. I don't know about this stuff, so don't ask me. Um,
Me neither. Have no idea what you're talking about.
exactly. And why it's important for the community and for the company. I think for let's start with the company because that's pretty simple as we get an excuse to get a lot of our team that don't usually meet each other in person together and combine that uh, with community involvement and having a great time with the other folks in the community. And for the community, I think as important as every other sprint is, yeah, as it's all every time we have a Beethoven sprint, we manage to make another leap forward in the development of Plone. I don't know. What do you think,
Yeah,
Erico? What
man.
makes it especially important for the community?
I I said that a few years ago to the electoral justice when we organized a sprint here in Brazil. We're going to have another one later this year. Gouveia is here. We're discussing about that, but it's the opportunity for you to get you're organizing, right? It's the opportunity for you to get free consultancy because all of a sudden
Hmm.
you have some of the best people in the world in what they do sitting at your office or close to you, and then you have the opportunity to tap on their shoulders and ask questions. And that's really important. And for the developers, it's really important to get in touch with people that are outside their usual group of friends. For Kit Concept, for instance, it's great when we have people from every other company coming and sharing what they're doing. So that way we understand the possibilities and the blockers we have when developing projects and so on and so forth. And Alin, that's watching us here, we discussed that in Bucharest. When we sit together at a sprint and we share, oh, how do you deploy things? How do you do CI and so on and so forth? It's beneficial for everyone. I do have an interesting question here from Govea. Only developers should join a sprint.
No, not exactly. I think anyone who's involved with the community in any way should join the sprint. We had design focused sprints in the past as well, where we, for example, I think in 2022 we had Irene um and oh damn, I forgot his name, who created Pastanaga UI. Uh God damn. I'm so sorry. But we had those
Albert.
Albert, exactly. We had these two over for the sprint. It's also if you're not a particularly um, into writing code, but rather, for example, documentation, we always are happy to have people who are into documentation to be there and help out. And in I think the only requirement is that you have at least a slight interest in the project that the sprint is about. So in our case, with Plone, or at least web development in some facet, and that's enough.
Okay, so how do you organize a sprint? I think this is the question here, and we have a bunch of other questions that are connected to how do you organize a sprint, or
Sure.
how do you do, and so on. So how do you organize a sprint? Is this something like big, and or can I do like a small sprint?
Absolutely. I mean, organizing a sprint in the end only comes down to just getting people to some place to sit together. So um, that means the only thing you need to do is reach out to people, reach out to the community and tell them, hey, these are the dates, uh, this is the location, please come. And from there on, most things in some way or the other will figure themselves out on their own. Though I have to say, with a couple of years doing this, um, there are more and more and more and more blocks you can stack on top of that to improve the event from year to year. Um, and some things that are quite obvious for the attendees to see, just to organize infrastructure, to get drinks. At Kid Concept, we have the very nice situation that we have a relatively large office with multiple rooms and a nice garden and so on that we can use. But I know, for example, other people organizing sprints, they have to first come up with a venue, which can be tricky at times, but I think usually that is something that you can figure out. And luckily, we have the big old Plone Foundation in the background who can financially support also such things. Um, I see a question from Astrid. How many people usually come to Sprint? I think between 4 and 30, I'd guess. Uh, I think the uh, I think the most people are usually at the conference sprints because they are at the conference anyways and so on. There was another
That,
question
yeah,
by Astrid.
actually,
Can
I
you
clicked on the
pop?
wrong one. The
Ah,
first,
okay.
the important one is this one. The other one we talked about.
Is is there funding available and what can it be used for? Beer? Um, so what it can be used for uh, is something that the organizer kind of has to talk about with the community. We set some guidelines there, and uh, asking about beer, really important question because the Plone Foundation is a legal entity in the United States, and they seem to have a problem with our lovely beers here. It can actually not be used on beers. That's that's then to be paid by other sponsors, or maybe you have a euro or two to buy yourself your own beers.
Yeah, adding something here that
Sure.
the Plone Foundation has this funding and this money goes, and I do not know the current rules to be honest, but I do remember we had levels. Not every sprint needs to have 30 people, right? It's like everyone tries to organize a sprint with 30 people when honestly we should have smaller sprints and so on. And smaller sprints, we used to say there was in the budget what we call pizza money. It's basically money for you to buy food, to sit around and hack. For larger sprints, usually you get the money to help people travel to the place and stay in
Exactly.
place and so on and so forth, or pay for the venue.
As I said, the most important thing about a sprint is the people there, and therefore I think, in my personal opinion, the most efficient use of your sponsorship money is to try to use it as effectively on getting people to your sprint, because apart from having a nice time, I think that's also always a good motivation for someone to travel somewhere if they don't have to pay a month worth of salary also for accommodation and a train ticket.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing in here. Leonardo Caballero mentioned that his first Plone sprint was in the Plone South American Symposium back in 2009. And back then, we used foundation money to bring him to São Paulo because our goal was to have people from other places, and I see that as a valuable thing, like in the community. Uh, if you are in Europe, if you're based in Central Europe, you can attend almost every single sprint without breaking a sweat, like the major sprints, because they are happening around Europe. But for people in Mexico or Brazil or South Africa, it's hard to get other people there. So this money goes a long way to basically offsetting part of the costs. So that's important. One thing we barely mention is the do a sprint needs to be a topic or not to have a topic. Oh, we're going to work on Volto, or we're going to work on Plone 7 or whatever.
I'd say so and so. I'd say it really helps, especially if your goal is to be a strategic sprint and strategically contribute to the further development. It doesn't only really help. I think it's necessary to set a few very specific topics that you're planning to work on, and you can also then use those as guidelines when you're thinking about, oh, who should really be there at the sprint, who do we need for these topics, and so on. Um, but I think there are also sprints in the community that are organized in a rather in a slightly different way, where there's not this big overarching um, goal for that sprint, but rather an event where everyone comes there and brings their own ideas and own things to work on, and then maybe from this also larger things um, are created. Because when lots of smart, creative people sit together, they're usually more than just the sum of the parts. And
Yeah.
from my experience with sprints like Beethoven Sprint is that it's kind of a mix. We have specific strategic goals set, but usually are not 30 people focused coding on one specific feature. I don't think that would work. But then rather an amalgamation of all sorts of smaller topics that are brought up, people discover or just like to work on. Yeah, so you get a nice mix of both in there.
Yeah, one important thing is the having a topic is important for strategic sprints because you move long forward, and it's also important to avoid the situation of the sprint is just an excuse for me to travel to some place and work on the things I want to work, and but we always support people doing other stuff. For instance, I went to Bucharest now and I was working with Cookie Plone with Valentina and Alin, where people were working on every other thing and they had their focus and so on. What is important is for you to communicate what's going to happen, right? And for you to invite people. There's a question from Timo Bruskamp. Do newcomers also get the sponsoring to attend the sprint?
Oh, I mean, that depends on the organizer deciding whether that makes sense and whether that's within the current budget constraints. Um, I think for this particular sprint, for the Beethoven sprint coming up, I rather focused on getting the people who are strategically necessary for the sprint there. And one could argue that newcomers are very strategically necessary to kind of populate the community. But at least in that case, I rather focused on the technically relevant people. But um,
One, yes, giving my 2 cents on this, I prefer if we're going to have a sprint to attract newcomers, I would prefer to simply go to the newcomers with some people, then basically
mhm,
pay some of the newcomers to come. That's different from and when we say newcomers, it's someone that's not around the radar of the Plone community. Okay,
yeah,
if we're talking about someone that has been contributing for months and so on and so forth, you're not a newcomer at all.
yeah.
That's a different story, and I think we have another interesting question. Actually, there are two questions that from friends. So the first one is going to sprints means traveling. As I know you love to stand travels around sprints or alternative routes, what's the weirdest travel situation around sprints you got yourself into?
Oof, the weirdest. Uh, oh, well, that there are situations that maybe I shouldn't talk about on the internet. There has been a certain ferry ride last year, but let's not dabble into that. Uh, Maybe last year in Brazil, I ended up drunk with some Sao Paulo based punk band uh, drinking in Rio de Janeiro, and then meeting them again half a year later back here in Germany because for whatever reason they are fan of some particular German football club, which was quite funny. Yeah, let's go with that.
Actually, uh, uh, I did a keynote a few years back on the Brazilian Python conference, and I mentioned that one of the beauties of the Plone community is the fact that we have sprints or everywhere, and then you can travel to places, and then of course you're traveling there, you're crossing the ocean in some cases. You stay for 1 or 2 days more, and then you visit places. I know Fred has been doing that for a while. I've done that in the past. Not nowadays. I have a tight schedule, but just to mention, we had sprints in saunas, we had sprints in castles, we had sprints in the top of in a really remote place with no internet connectivity and cell phone. So people had to basically get all the commits together, and then someone goes up the hill to push them at the end of the day. We had sprints in a coffee shop, like coffee place, not coffee shop, yeah, in São Paulo. We had sprints over a swimming pool. It's about getting people together, and actually there's a question also related to this, that is there an opportunity to socialize with the community during a sprint?
Absolutely. I mean, you're socializing all day anyways, but usually what we tend to do uh, is go have dinner together after the event and then maybe share a beer or two or three, and depending on who you're sharing the beers with, even four or five. Yeah, absolutely. That's also something that you as a sprint organizer should, I wouldn't say should do, but that's something you can do as well. Taking care of social events during and after the sprint. For example, last year we had that nice visit to the German Aerospace Center, DLR, to take a look how the European astronauts train there. And yeah, totally.
So there's a question here about where do I find about other sprints. So plone.org news dash event. So go there. You have the information there. And of course, we have our boss asking one important question. Let's see if it appears here.
What is a
Ha!
hacking night? Hacking night. So the idea, usually we end the sprint at a certain time, and everyone goes to the hotels, or everyone goes to dinner and then to the hotel, and basically that's the end of the day of sprinting. The idea of the hacking night is to at least have one day where we have a kind of open-ended event and continue on basically until everyone is tired and wants to go to sleep. We're usually ordering pizzas, having drinks, socializing in the office, and yeah, it only ends until the last person decided, okay, that's enough coding for the day. I'll call it quits and go to bed. Yep.
Yeah, there's one thing that we did not mention, but yeah, for larger sprints, we usually need to have a sprint leader or someone that's basically doing the cat herding. And we usually have a document where people put what they're working and so on and so forth. And this leader kind of guarantees that everyone reports on what they're doing. And this is important in terms of organizations like a project manager that helps the sprint keeps going. And I'm mentioning that because we need to talk about the post sprint. What happens? Imagine Beethoven Sprint. Every year I follow your your desperation dealing with the post sprint. Sprint is amazing. You organize everything, every dinner, hacking night, order pizza, and then some people disappear on a certain Friday because they go somewhere else, right, to a certain Star Trek event. I have no idea. But after the sprint, you still need to do some housekeeping, right? Especially when you get money
I
from
mean,
sponsors.
I'd say well the first thing in terms of post sprint work is just cleaning up your sprint location, obviously. Um, but I think that's taken for granted that that happens. And then yeah, you were talking about kind of financial housekeeping. That's because you're working not with your own money, but um you're working with sponsor money. You need to be held accountable, or you need to be accountable for what you've spent that on, and um, so they will continue supporting the next sprint. So there's a lot of accounting just involved, putting together all the bills that piled up during and before the event, and potentially even after. But I don't think that this is really exciting to talk about. Another thing that's really important post sprint, or two things that just came to my mind are, for one, you need to write some sort of reporting, what happened during the sprint, what was actually achieved, and so on, so that the wider community, who maybe not everyone took part in the sprint, has an idea what actually happened. And another thing, especially in case you're planning to organize sprints more regularly, is to collect some feedback on what went well, what uh, didn't go so well, are there any suggestions for improvements, and so on and so on.
Okay, it's obvious that we need to share
Yep.
this. This is an inside joke that every night is hiking night for Rob. Rob usually opens his laptop anywhere that he's
Yeah.
able to sit, sometimes not even sitting.
I think we
So
have
it is,
that particular image of him sitting in a corner in some nightclub in Brasilia,
yeah,
with
during a
his
karaoke
laptop
night.
open.
I heard that. Uh, and of course, he's feeling bad and say, "Not just me. Yes, you are the one. Come on." But one thing you mentioned that other people should organize sprints, right? And again,
Sure.
organizing sprint is not organizing like a huge sprint for 30 people, strategic, and so on and so forth. You can do a small sprint, and I believe I saw here that Leonardo Caballero wants to organize one in Spain, and please go for it.
Absolutely.
And the whole point in here is why other people should organize sprints, and what's your advice for them to do it?
Why? Because it's fun. I'd say. At least for me, Beethoven Sprint is always one of the most fun weeks for the whole of the year. And how? Just get together a bunch of people. You don't need to invite all the internationals and try to organize travel for someone from Brazil, and then someone from South Africa, and then someone from the US. Just get your local community together. Um, and it also just doesn't need to be a whole week. It can be 3 days maybe. Um, and just go for it.
And the important thing in here, I usually say that to my Brazilian colleagues that if you organize a sprint, is the opportunity to get together, work together on something, and so on, and also it's the opportunity for you to understand what everybody else is doing and their challenges and so on. And not every sprint needs to be strategic, and not every sprint needs to have 30 people. Not every sprint needs. You can do smaller things. One thing that we start doing as a community for a while, it's to have hybrid sprints where people are in the location and Stevie Purse is back in Oregon, not sleeping. Uh, but this is a way also to democratize and bring more people to your sprint. It's not a rule of thumb, but it is important for you to consider that because not everyone can travel, not everyone can attend sprints all the time. So consider that also. But I want to mention one thing, and I think Jakob may have some points. It's sprint is also the opportunity for you to meet human beings you talk online and
Yes.
develop a connection with them and understand them and see like their body language and see how they behave. We are, as my good friend Fred usually say, we are a community of neurodiverse people. And honestly, talking only online it's like a nightmare because misunderstandings happen all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you go and
I've
you
known
understand
you
the
only
person,
online for quite a while, and I always thought you were a nice guy, and then I met
exactly.
you in Bonn, and now I prefer to rather keep it online again, right?
Yes, I know. But jokes aside, it's one of the things that make this community. This community is a community that's based on basically online, right? But every time we meet in person, we create these relationships. We know people, right? We meet different people. We understand them. We understand what's going on in their lives and so on. So we go out for beers that are not paid by the foundation, by the way, every night, or we go for coffee, or we have vegan food because this community we have everything, every type of food preference and diet and so on we have. So we do different things and we basically gather. For instance, we have Rob telling us about climbing and why people should not try to go all the way to the top in the Everest mountain, right? And you need to do that and go up and go down a bit and so on. That's so awesome that he explained to my son last year. And my son was like, oh, now I get it. We are multifaceted people with different interests, not only Plone and not only Star Trek. So it's the opportunity for us to basically understand better uh, each other. And Astrid made a reference to an old movie. If you build, they will come. Be sure. Usually they
So,
come. And for years there was a joke in the Plone community. If you organize something, there was a certain Dutch person that would appear out of nowhere. Uh, it's not someone active in the community right now, so I'm not I'm not at liberty to saying his name. But I remember organizing the Plum Symposium in South America and the guy appearing the first day, and I'm kind of, what the hell are you doing here? Yeah, I decided to come all the way from the Netherlands. Thank you. Uh, I think we are running out of time. So, Jakob, final message.
final message is there is a Beethoven Sprint coming up, May 18th, so just a month away. Please come there. And if you are not able to come, or organize your own sprint wherever you live. I think that's all I can say. And then I need to do some damage report on my spaceship because that's Enterprise not looking good.
Oh yeah, I believe it's the A, right?
No, it's the original.
Oh, it's so Scotty can help you. I have
Yeah,
Scotty there somewhere. Yeah, not able to see
send him
his.
over.
Yeah, I'm going to send him over. So I would like to thank everyone that tuned in today. Please again like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we are going to be here next week with another office hours. We are going to announce it probably tomorrow, and Astrid is going to ask me to say that, but she did not yet. Tomorrow is World Plone Day, so we're going to have 24 hours of Plone content on YouTube and so on and so forth. Spread the word, go for it, organize something, record a video, send a message, and so on. Thanks Armin and Astrid for organizing this. It's lovely. Here in Brazil, we're going to have one in-person event. We are going to, I believe it was announced already, but the important thing is spread the word of Plone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next week with another office hours. Live long and prosper.